In the magnificent garden of a mansion in Zurich, the midday sun blazed down on the lush green lawn. A young billionaire stepped out from his office and witnessed something unbelievable. His poor, thin housemaid was kneeling on the ground, pulling up handfuls of fresh grass and bringing them to her mouth. He stood frozen, horrified. "What are you doing?" he shouted. She trembled, her eyes red and swollen. "I'm sorry. I just didn't want my daughter at home to starve to death." A tear fell onto the grass beneath her, and in that moment, everything in his life changed forever. His name was Adrian. He was 38 years old, a billionaire who had made his fortune in real estate. He lived alone in a sprawling mansion in Zurich, surrounded by luxury most people could only dream of. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, priceless art on every wall. He was known in business circles as cold, demanding, and ruthlessly efficient. He didn't have time for small talk or sentimentality. He measured everything by results and numbers. On his wrist, he wore a gold watch worth more than most people's yearly salary. It was a symbol of his success, a reminder that time was money and he had mastered both. The woman's name was Maria. She was 32 years old, a single mother struggling to survive. She worked part-time as a housemaid at Adrian's mansion, cleaning rooms and doing laundry for barely enough money to pay rent. She lived with her 7-year-old daughter Anna in a tiny apartment across the city. Maria was thin, worn down by years of hardship, but she never complained. She worked quietly, efficiently, trying to be invisible. Around her neck, she wore an old knitted scarf that Anna had made for her. It was falling apart, but Maria treasured it more than anything. That afternoon, Adrian had been working in his home office when he decided to take a break. He stepped out into the garden for some fresh air. The lawn was perfectly manicured, green and pristine. But then he saw her, Maria, his housemaid, on her hands and knees in the grass. At first, he thought she was pulling weeds, but then he saw her bring something to her mouth. Grass. She was eating grass, raw grass, like an animal. "What are you doing?" Adrian's voice cut through the air like a whip. Maria jumped, terrified. She scrambled to her feet, grass stains on her knees, her face flushed with shame. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm so sorry." Adrian stared at her, disgust and confusion warring on his face. "You're eating my lawn. Have you lost your mind? This is unacceptable behavior." Maria's eyes filled with tears. Her whole body shook. "Please don't fire me. Please, I need this job." "That doesn't explain why you're eating grass like some kind of—" Adrian stopped, suddenly noticing how thin she was, how her uniform hung loose on her frame, how her hands trembled not just from fear, but from weakness. "Why?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Why would you do this?" Maria broke down completely. Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed back onto her knees. "I haven't eaten in 3 days," she sobbed. "My daughter, Anna, she's sick. She has a fever that won't break. I spent all my money on medicine for her. I've been giving her my food, but there's nothing left. I was just so hungry, and the grass looked so green, and I thought—" Adrian stood there frozen. He had never seen such raw desperation in his life. This woman, who cleaned his toilets and washed his sheets, had been starving while working in his home. While he ate gourmet meals prepared by his private chef, she had been reduced to eating grass from his lawn just to survive, just to keep going so she could take care of her sick child. For the first time in years, something cracked in Adrian's chest. Something that felt dangerously close to shame. "Get up," he said finally, his voice strange and tight. Maria stood on shaking legs, expecting to be dismissed, expecting to lose everything. But Adrian didn't fire her. Instead, he said, "Come inside. You need food. Real food." Maria looked at him in shock. "Sir, Adrian cut her off. "That wasn't a request. Follow me." As they walked back to the mansion, Adrian glanced at his gold watch. Time is money, he'd always believed. But what good was all his time and all his money if people were eating grass in his garden? Real life Mark. That night, Adrian sat alone in his study and thought, "I have the whole world in my hands. But today, I saw a mother who didn't even have a meal. What does that make me? The next morning, Adrian did something he'd never done before. He asked his assistant to pull Maria's employment file. What he found made his stomach turn. Maria had been working for him for 2 years. In that entire time, she'd never taken a sick day. She'd never asked for a raise. She'd never complained. Her salary was the minimum wage he was legally required to pay. He'd never thought about it before, never questioned it. But now, seeing those numbers, knowing what he knew, he felt sick. Adrian made a decision. Without telling anyone, he had his driver take him to the address listed on Maria's file. It was a rundown apartment building in one of the poorest parts of Zurich. Graffiti covered the walls. The elevator was broken. Adrian climbed 4 flights of stairs and knocked on a door that looked like it might fall off its hinges. Maria opened it, her eyes going wide with shock. "Mr. Adrian, what are you doing here?" "I came to check on you," he said simply. "And your daughter." Maria's face flushed with embarrassment. "Please, sir, you shouldn't see this. It's not appropriate." But Adrian gently pushed past her into the tiny apartment. One room served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. The furniture was old and broken, but it was clean, spotlessly clean. And in a small bed in the corner, covered with blankets, lay a little girl, Anna. The child looked up when Adrian entered. She was pale and thin with dark circles under her eyes. But she smiled when she saw him. "Mama, who's this?" she asked weakly. Maria rushed to her daughter's side. "This is Mr. Adrian. He's Mama's boss." Anna's eyes lit up. "Are you Mama's friend?" The question was so innocent, so pure that Adrian felt something catch in his throat. "Yes," he heard himself say. "I'm your Mama's friend." Adrian knelt beside the bed. He noticed the old knitted scarf wrapped around Anna's shoulders. "Did you make this?" he asked. Anna nodded proudly. "I made it for Mama. She's always cold when she comes home from work." Adrian looked at Maria, saw the tears in her eyes, and understood. She was cold because she was starving, because she gave everything to her daughter and kept nothing for herself. "It's beautiful," he said to Anna. "You're very talented." Maria couldn't understand what was happening. Why was this powerful, wealthy man sitting on the floor of her slum apartment, talking gently to her sick daughter? "Mr. Adrian, you really don't have to." But Adrian held up his hand. "How long has she been sick?" Maria's voice trembled. 2 weeks. I've been taking her to the free clinic, but they say she needs tests we can't afford. They say she might need to go to the hospital, but I don't have insurance that covers." "Take her tomorrow," Adrian interrupted. "To the best children's hospital in Zurich. All expenses will be covered." Maria stared at him. "I can't accept that. I can't possibly repay you." Adrian looked at her seriously. "You don't need to repay me. Consider it an advance on your salary, or a bonus, or whatever you need to call it to accept help." He stood up, his gold watch catching the dim light. But for the first time, it felt heavy on his wrist. Obscene. Before he left, Maria insisted on making him something. "Please, let me give you dinner. It's the least I can do." She had so little, but she heated up some soup, simple vegetable broth with bread. It was the most basic meal Adrian had eaten in years. No truffle oil, no imported ingredients, no presentation, just food, warm and honest. And it was one of the best meals he'd ever had, because it was made with gratitude, with love, with the last of what this woman had. Anna insisted on showing Adrian her drawings. She pulled out a piece of paper with 3 stick figures. "This is Mama," she pointed, "and this is me, and this is my new friend." She pointed at the 3rd figure. "That's you, Mr. Adrian, because you made Mama smile today." Adrian looked at the drawing for a long time. A family. This little girl had drawn him into her family. He felt something break and reform inside his chest. As he prepared to leave, Adrian took off his gold watch. Maria's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Adrian picked up Anna's knitted scarf instead, holding it carefully. "This," he said quietly, "is warmer than any gold I own. It was made with love, with sacrifice. That's real value." He set his watch on the table. Keep this. Sell it if you need money. I won't miss it." Maria tried to protest, but Adrian was already walking out the door. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Maria, about Anna, about that tiny apartment with its broken furniture and enormous love. He built an empire. He'd accumulated more wealth than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. But what had he built it for? Who was he building it for? He lived alone in a mansion while people like Maria ate grass in his garden. The thought made him physically ill. He pulled out his private journal, something he rarely used. But tonight he needed to write. He needed to process what he was feeling. "I saw her eating grass," he wrote, "and I was angry, but not at her, at myself, at a world where this is possible, at the fact that I had everything and noticed nothing. She is just a housemaid, and I am a billionaire. But today she taught me more about strength and love than I've learned in my entire privileged life." Real life, Mark. Maria wrote in her own diary that night, "He is a billionaire and I am just a maid. But today, he listened to me like I was a human being, like I mattered." Word spread quickly in Adrian's social circle. His ex-girlfriend Sophia, a wealthy socialite, heard through mutual friends that Adrian had been visiting a maid's apartment. She was furious. They'd broken up 6 months ago because Adrian was too focused on work and not romantic enough. Now she heard he was being romantic with a servant. It was unthinkable, unacceptable, and she intended to put a stop to it. Sophia showed up at Adrian's mansion unannounced. She swept past the butler and found Adrian in his study. "We need to talk," she announced. Adrian looked up from his laptop, irritated. "Sophia, I'm busy." She laughed, a sharp sound. "Too busy to talk to me, but not too busy to visit slums? What's going on, Adrian? Have you lost your mind?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sophia leaned against his desk. "Don't play dumb. You've been visiting your maid, the one who was caught eating grass in your garden like some kind of animal." "Watch your mouth," Adrian said dangerously. Sophia rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, everyone's talking about it. How you've gone soft. How you're throwing money at some pathetic woman and her sick brat. It's embarrassing, Adrian, for you and for everyone who knows you." Adrian stood up slowly. "Get out." Sophia blinked. "What?" Adrian's voice was cold as ice. "Get out of my house and don't come back." But the damage was done. The story spread among Adrian's business associates. At board meetings, he noticed the whispers. His credibility was being questioned, his judgment. "A billionaire who befriends his maid," they said. "What's next? Is he going to start giving away his fortune to every sob story?" The pressure mounted. His board of directors called a special meeting. "Your personal life is affecting company image," they told him. "We strongly suggest you distance yourself from this situation for the good of the business." Meanwhile, Maria heard the gossip too. Other staff members at the mansion told her what people were saying, that she was taking advantage of Adrian, that she was a gold digger who'd manipulated a rich man with her sob story. The shame was unbearable. She couldn't stand the thought of hurting Adrian's reputation, of causing him problems. So she made a decision. She would quit. She would disappear. It was better for everyone. She went to Adrian's office to resign. "I'm grateful for everything you've done," she said, not meeting his eyes. "But I think it's best if I leave. I've caused enough trouble." Adrian looked at her sharply. "What are you talking about?" Maria's hands twisted together nervously. "People are talking. They're saying terrible things about you because of me. I don't want to be the reason you lose respect or business. You've been so kind, but I need to go." "No," Adrian said flatly. "You're not going anywhere." Maria finally looked up at him. "But," Adrian came around his desk and took her hands. "Listen to me. I don't care what people say. I don't care if they think I'm soft or foolish or whatever nonsense they're spreading. What I care about is that you and Anna are okay. That's what matters." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "But why? Why do you care so much about us?" Before Adrian could answer, the crisis escalated. Anna's condition worsened. Maria called Adrian in a panic. Anna had collapsed at school. She was being rushed to the hospital. Adrian dropped everything and met them there. When he arrived, Maria was in the hallway, crying hysterically. They say she needs emergency surgery, something with her appendix, but I don't have the money. I don't have insurance. They're saying they might not be able to. I'll pay for it, Adrian said immediately. Whatever it costs, whatever she needs. He grabbed Maria's shoulders. Listen to me. No one is going to abandon you and Anna. Not the doctors, not me, not anyone. Do you understand? Maria sobbed into his chest. Why are you doing this? We're nothing to you. Adrian held her tightly. You're not nothing. You're everything. 2 days later, after Anna's successful surgery, Adrian had to attend a mandatory charity gala. It was one of those events where wealthy people congratulated themselves for donating small fractions of their fortunes. He didn't want to go, but business obligations demanded it. Sophia was there, of course, and she'd been drinking. When she saw Adrian, she made her move. In front of everyone, she approached him with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced loudly, let's give a round of applause to Adrian, who's discovered a new hobby, charity work. Although I hear it's very specific charity work. He's been helping his maid, the one who was eating grass in his garden like a goat. Laughter rippled through the crowd. People turned to stare. Adrian felt rage building inside him. Sophia continued, enjoying herself. Isn't it sweet? A billionaire falling for a woman who's so poor she eats grass. It's like a twisted fairy tale. Next thing you know, he'll be marrying her and playing daddy to her little bastard child. The crowd's laughter grew louder. This was entertainment. Scandal. The perfect gossip for their boring, empty lives. Adrian walked slowly to where Sophia stood. He took the microphone from her hand. The room went silent, waiting for his response. You want to talk about that day? Adrian said, his voice carrying through the ballroom. Fine, let's talk about it. Yes, I found Maria eating grass. And you know what? It destroyed me. It destroyed everything I thought I knew about myself and the world. He looked around at the sea of expensive dresses and tailored suits. This woman worked in my home for 2 years. She was starving, and I never noticed. Her daughter was sick, and I never asked. She was desperate enough to eat grass, and I was too busy counting my money to see her humanity. His voice grew stronger. You laugh because you think it's funny. You think she's pathetic. But I'll tell you what's pathetic. It's us, all of us. We have so much, and we see so little. Adrian removed his gold watch and held it up. This costs $50,000. Do you know what $50,000 means to Maria? It's years of security. It's her daughter's education. It's hope. He walked over to where Maria stood in shock in the corner. She'd heard about the gala and come to try one last time to convince Adrian to distance himself from her. Now she watched, frozen as he approached. I choose this, Adrian said, taking Maria's hand. I choose real love over fake prestige. I choose a woman who knows what sacrifice means. I choose a child who draws pictures of family instead of asking for designer toys. I choose them. He placed his gold watch in Maria's trembling hand. And if any of you have a problem with that, you can leave, because I'm done with this empty, hollow life. The ballroom was absolutely silent. Then slowly a few people began to clap, then more. Not everyone. Many walked out in disgust, but some stayed. Some understood. If you believe that love and kindness are stronger than money, drop a below. Follow LT Stories for more moments that change hearts. After the gala, everything changed. Adrian didn't just help Maria financially. He gave her purpose. He established a charitable foundation specifically for single mothers struggling in poverty. And he made Maria the director. You understand their struggles better than anyone, he told her. You've lived it. You can help them in ways I never could. Maria was terrified at first. She had no experience running anything. But Adrian believed in her, and slowly she began to believe in herself. Maria's first speech at the foundation's opening was simple and powerful. She told her story. About working multiple jobs, about choosing between medicine and food, about the day she ate grass because she had nothing left. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Donations poured in. Not just money, but time, resources, expertise. People wanted to help. They just needed to see the problem clearly. Maria had shown them. Meanwhile, Adrian made another decision. He couldn't stand living alone in his massive mansion anymore. It felt obscene. So he did something radical. He moved into Maria and Anna's tiny apartment. His staff thought he'd lost his mind. His business partners worried he was having a breakdown. But Adrian had never felt more sane in his life. He slept on their small couch. He helped cook meals in their cramped kitchen. He read bedtime stories to Anna. And for the first time in his adult life, he felt like he was truly living. Anna recovered fully from her surgery. The day she came home from the hospital, she threw her arms around Adrian's neck and said, "Thank you, Dad, Adrian." Maria started crying. Adrian froze. "What did you call me?" he asked the little girl. Anna looked worried. "Is that okay? Can I call you Dad? You feel like a dad." Adrian pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "You can call me anything you want, sweetheart. I'd be honored." After living in their apartment for a month, Adrian made a proposal. Not the romantic kind, not yet, but a practical one. "Come live with me," he said to Maria one evening. "You and Anna, not as my maid, as my family." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Adrian, I can't. People will talk. They already think terrible things." Adrian took her hands. "Let them talk. I don't care anymore. I've wasted years caring what people think. I'm done with that. I only care what you think, what Anna thinks, what we build together." Maria was afraid, but she also knew she was falling in love with this man. This unexpected, impossible man who had knelt down in her world instead of pulling her up into his. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll come." The move happened quickly. But Adrian didn't just move them into guest rooms. He gave Anna her own bedroom, decorated exactly how she wanted. He gave Maria her own space too. "This is your home," he insisted. "Not mine, ours." Then Adrian did something symbolic. He took Maria and Anna out to the garden, to the spot where he'd found Maria eating grass months before. "I want to change this," he said. "I want this to represent something different now." Together, the three of them dug up the grass. They planted flowers, roses, tulips, daisies, a riot of colors and life. Anna picked out each one. "These are happy flowers," she announced, "because we're a happy family now." As they worked in the soil, their hands dirty and hearts full, Adrian said to Maria, "From now on, grass in this garden is only for looking at, for enjoying, never for eating because you're desperate, never again." Maria's tears fell onto the freshly turned earth. Adrian wrapped his arms around her. "You taught me how to be human again," he whispered. "You showed me that wealth without compassion is just poverty in disguise. Let me take care of you now. Let me give back even a fraction of what you've given me." The garden became their sanctuary. Every evening, they would walk through it together. Adrian would point out how the flowers were growing. Anna would make up stories about each plant. And Maria would hold Adrian's hand, still amazed that this was her life now, that she had gone from eating grass in desperation to planting flowers in hope. The transformation was almost too much to believe. One evening after Anna had gone to bed, Adrian and Maria sat on a bench in the garden. The stars were out. The air smelled like roses. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said. "I'm falling in love with you. I've probably been falling since the day I saw you on your knees in the grass. Not because I pity you, but because you showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like, what actually matters in this world." Maria looked at him, her eyes shining. "I'm falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me, because you're you and I'm just..." Adrian put his finger to her lips. Don't diminish yourself. You're the strongest person I know. You survived things that would have destroyed most people. You raised a beautiful daughter alone. You never lost your kindness even when the world was cruel. You're not just anything. You're everything. If you believe love can grow from pain, press like and follow LT Stories. Share this with someone who needs hope. 6 months later, Anna made a drawing in school. It was for an assignment called My Family. She drew 3 people standing in a beautiful garden full of flowers. A woman, a man, and a child, all holding hands. At the top, in her careful child's writing, she wrote, My family, Mama, Dad Adrian, and me. When she brought it home and showed them, both adults burst into tears. That drawing became the catalyst for a conversation that needed to happen. That evening, after Anna was asleep, Adrian knelt in front of Maria in the garden they'd planted together. "I have a question," he said. Maria's heart raced. She knew what was coming. "I'm not your employer anymore. I'm not your benefactor. I want to be your husband. I want to be Anna's father. Not because I feel obligated, not because I'm trying to save you, but because you saved me first." He pulled out a ring, not an ostentatious diamond, something simple and beautiful. "The day I found you eating grass was the worst and best day of my life. Worst because it showed me how blind I'd been. Best because it woke me up. It brought me to you, to Anna, to this life we're building. Say you'll stay. Say you'll be my wife. Say we can make this real and permanent." Maria's hands covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. "I used to think you were just taking pity on me, that this couldn't be real, that one day you'd realize you'd made a mistake and I'd lose everything again." Adrian shook his head firmly. "This is not pity. This is love. Real, complicated, beautiful love. The kind that sees someone at their lowest and doesn't look away. The kind that holds on. Say yes, Maria. Choose us like we choose you." Maria pulled him to his feet and kissed him. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. They held each other in the garden as the evening breeze rustled through the flowers they'd planted together. Flowers that grew where grass had once been eaten in desperation. Flowers that represented hope, transformation, and new beginnings. They married a month later, nothing extravagant, a simple ceremony in their garden with only people who truly mattered. Anna was the flower girl, practically glowing with happiness. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Anna shouted, "No way, they belong together." Everyone laughed. It was perfect. It was real. It was them. After the ceremony, as the sun began to set and cast golden light across the garden, the three of them stood together, looking at what they'd built. "Do you remember that day?" Adrian asked Maria softly. She nodded. "I'll never forget it. The day I was so hungry I ate grass. The day I thought was the most shameful of my life." Adrian turned her to face him. "That was the day that changed everything. The day I stopped living in my ivory tower and started actually living. You gave me that gift." Anna tugged on both their hands. "Can I say something?" They both looked down at her. "What is it, sweetheart?" Maria asked. Anna's face was serious. "I'm glad Mama ate the grass that day, because otherwise Dad Adrian wouldn't have found us, and we wouldn't be a family. So the grass was magic, like a spell that brought us all together." Out of the mouths of babes, Adrian thought. She was right. That terrible moment had been magic, dark magic that transformed into light. Maria rested her head on Adrian's shoulder and looked around their garden, their home, their life. "Real wealth," she said quietly, "isn't measured in money or mansions. It's measured in this, in love, in family, in second chances and new beginnings, in flowers growing where there was once only hunger and despair." Adrian kissed her forehead. "You taught me that. You and Anna. You showed me that the richest man isn't the one with the most money. It's the one with the most love. And by that measure, I'm the wealthiest man alive." The gate to their property stood open, welcoming. Inside, lights glowed warmly in the windows. In the garden, flowers bloomed in every color. And three people who had found each other in the most unlikely way stood together, whole and happy and home. If you believe kindness can change everything, follow LT Stories for more healing tales. Like and share if this touched your heart. Real wealth is love.